Have a seat. Welcome to Environment, Climate, and Legacy Committee. It's called this to order. There are 6 members present, so you have a quorum. There's a full agenda. So what we're going to ask people to do when you're up here capitulating your argument on why or why not, so please keep it to 2 minutes. No, keep it to 2 minutes. Anything under, we're going to be happy that you got to your point. Anything over, we're going to have to gavel you out and move you on to the next one. Is that fair? Just because of the fact that we have a time limit to get out of here. So if you would allow that, that would be wonderful. I appreciate that. We have us up first, Senate File 2077, Senator Hur, the Environment, Natural Resources, Appropriations, and Provisions Modifications. Bob Meyer, Tom Johnson, and Andrew Morley. Do you want to come on up and have a chair next to the good senator? So with that, Senator Hur.
Thank you, Senator Hoffman, and I'll try to be good. The Senate File 2077 is the governor environmental budget proposal bill for our agency, mainly MPCA, DNR, Bowser, the zoo, and other agency under the jurisdiction of environment. So just to save our time, I'm just going to pass this time to our testifier.
Mr. Chairman, members, Bob Meyer, Department of Natural Resources Assistant Commissioner. Rather than go through the bill section by section, perhaps I can just hit some of the highlights and answer questions if possible. First of all, we'd like to thank Senator Hur and the committee for hearing the governor's budget bill and thank the senator for carrying it. And this 26-27 biennial budget plan for the DNR is representative of the fiscal situation that we have. There are some fees in the bill, raising our AIS fees with a small portion of general fund going back that was supporting that program. Looking at our groundwater appropriation fees, we are also taking back or giving back about $3.4 million of the general fund support for that and shifting to more fee-based, and several other positions that are there. The governor's bill does contain the gas, helium, hydrogen that will probably be pulled out and carried separately in a different bill, I understand. And it does deal with our critical investments, our operating adjustments, which even in the governor's budget did not cover our full operational cost increase, but we are working on that, just like everybody else in this building is. Funds our legal costs and some public safety training preparedness, and also returns back an appropriation of $3.9 million for drought-killed seedlings, and reduces funding for our local trail connections from the general fund, but there are still lottery and lieu dollars there. It does also contain the governor's recommendation, did contain the legacy portions, which are contained in a different bill. So thank you very much for your support, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Let's go to Mr. Commissioner, what are you, Director, Commissioner? Director Johnson. And then I think what we'll do, Senator Fong Her, is get through the folks to testify, and then we'll leave it up to your committee to ask questions as appropriate. And then I think we're going to lay this one over. Is that correct?
That's correct. So,
because it's going to come up again in the larger bill next week. So, members, think about that too. If you have any questions on this, there is going to be markup next week. So, Mr. Johnson, please, for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to Senator Hur, Chair Hur, for carrying the governor's bill recommendations. And we did present these recommendations to the committee earlier in the session, and appreciated that time to walk through those. But just a reminder. The bill recommendations for the MPCA, there's only a small couple of items that are pertaining to the general fund, Mr. Chair, and these are just within the small portion of the operating adjustment that the agency gets funding through the general fund. There is a larger piece that is permitting reform, and these are the items in the governor's budget related to permitting reform. There's also a separate policy item I know is being heard tomorrow that is a policy-only piece of permitting reform. And then the final item related to the general fund is the adjustment to county feedlot program appropriation, and this is reflecting the legislature's intent from 2023 session. Otherwise, the recommendations for the agency mostly come through the environmental fund or the remediation fund. There is one piece coming from the closed landfill investment fund, but as was noted by Senate Council earlier in session, most of the agency's funding comes from the environmental fund, so you will see that in the governor's recommendations. Sustainable aviation fuel regulatory support, making sure we're prepared for those industries coming to Minnesota. We have an excellent opportunity for both supporting agriculture, supporting jobs in Minnesota, and keeping up to our climate goals. The air appropriation item is no net cost. These are already fees that are collected in the environmental fund, and the legislature appropriates them back out to the agency. Mercury and skin lightening cream awareness and prevention. There have been there's a number of bills that have come before the legislature over the years, and one recently Senator Pappas has brought forward, and so we're happy to be in alignment on that issue. More work is needed there. Wasted food management, again, is a great win-win-win, hopefully, for folks, ensuring that we're getting the food to folks who need it with food insecurity, and also reducing waste going to our landfills and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There are a number of other smaller items in here, Mr. Chair, but the e-waste, I want to also mention the e-waste and battery product stewardship, another win-win-win for our economy as well as our environment. And so appreciate the committee hearing the recommendations. Thank you to Senator Herr. Thank you to you, Mr. Chair, and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Director Johnson. Let's get, we got one more for Andrew Morley. If you guys can make room, get another chair up there. Director of Environmental Policy, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. And then from there, Senator Herr, I think we have, might be one or two amendments that somebody will bring forward. So if folks got those amendments ready to have the discussion, then we'll enter into that. So Mr. Morley, please, for the record.
And to be clear, definitely not an assistant commissioner, so.
Dum-dum. Next time you're going to tell a joke, bring $5.
I tried. Chair Herr and Republican Lead Green, my name is Andrew Morley, and I'm with the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Our membership includes more than 6,300 businesses of all sizes from every industry across the state, along with their over 500,000 employees. Thank you for the chance to testify today on SF 2077, the committee's omnibus policy bill. First, the Chamber thanks the Chair, this committee, and the administration for a number of items. Funding environmental permitting efficiencies that streamline processes, address backlog permits, and developing tools to improve permitting all will help. The Minnesota Chamber Foundation released an update to the original report a year later, which detailed some improvements and continued challenges. We appreciate the agency's efforts at fixing shortcomings administratively as well as legislatively. We also support funding for sustainable aviation fuel regulatory services. As this industry comes online, the Chamber supports our members who participate at every level, from growing and producing feedstocks to flying the planes. And thank you for funding Clean Air Minnesota, which is a partnership of government, nonprofits, and the private sector to voluntarily reduce air pollution. CAM is undergoing a strategic refresh, and the Chamber supports their efforts. The Chamber also opposes several provisions. Creating another extended producer responsibility program, this time for electronic waste, is another mandate and cost layered on businesses that will be passed on to the consumer. Our members lead at all levels of recycling infrastructure, but are opposed to creation of a new EPR. Next, creating a new authority to punish permit engineers will only further complicate an already difficult process. Further details requested as part of a technical review may require more than 30 days to complete, such as subcontracting, testing, or modeling. Permit engineers may find this provision creates too much risk and can focus on projects outside of Minnesota. The increase in water appropriations permits, which in some cases amounts to nearly double, will only drive up costs that will be passed on to consumers. The Chamber and our members support a rulemaking process that's transparent to the public and offers all parties time to participate. Last, creating a new civil action against private businesses creates more uncertainty and may chill investment. In closing, I'll submit a letter for the record which has more detail. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. And with that, Senator Herr, any comments before we go to your committee, or do you want to go right to questions and we'll go from there? So,
I want to see if there's any other members in the audience that want to speak in support or opposition. Maybe we can take one or two.
cool. I like how you do that. I never do that because then
Okay,
50 people
so-
line up and
There's no.
I'm not seeing anybody run up here.
Sounds good.
Unless you want to get,
then
there's
we're-
a couple former senators in the room that haven't had time. I see 3 of them, actually. One former majority leader, if you want to get him to come up here. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to call out that person's name, but I don't see anybody coming up, Senator Hurst. So with that, I'll turn to your committee.
Sounds good. I'm ready for if
You
there's
ready?
any amendment.
Members, you got amendments? Anybody? Steve Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to committee members, I have the A1 amendment.
Does the A1 amendments being handed out? Do you want to get one to Senator Fong-Her? And then Mr. Green, Senator Green, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your amendment while we wait for it?
Okay, I did speak to the DNR about this, but they may have, they may want to talk about what this bill does is in the north part of the state, we've got a lot of people that have gotten timber contracts. And even though it was a really good year for cutting timber, our mills are full, and so there's a lot of standing timber now that is not going to get harvested under the current permits in time because they have no place to put it. And so what this bill does is it simply, for any permits that would be expiring in 2025, which would be the end of May at this point, this says that they can extend those permits for 2 years instead of one. Because they can extend them for one, but some of these permits have already had a 1-year extension. But right now, the loggers are at an impasse. They don't know where to go on this and what they're going to do with the standing timber that they have contracts on.
Assistant Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Green, I know we've been talking about this. This is the first time I've seen the language. If the committee wishes to put this on there, I want to work with you on it as we move forward in the essence of time, so.
Senator Green.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Myers, that would be great. All I want to do is make sure that they have the ability to get these off without having penalties or losing the timber.
All those in favor of the A1 amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't fast enough.
Any more? I think Senator Hur, committee members want to have a conversation with the good senator?
Mr. Chair, are we having questions now?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
committee. It's time to have a great conversation with him. Yeah, Senator Green, it's all yours.
I had a whole list of questions, but I understand that we're only going to do certain sections of the bill now, and we're going to bring it back next week, and so that we can get through those questions and hopefully get them answered. But as long as we're here, both MPCA and the DNR, I had a couple questions for them if they want to come back.
Senator Hur, you want to get Tom and Bob to?
Yes.
They might as well just stay in the seat. That'd be great. So come on up. Go ahead, Senator.
And whoever gets there first will get the first question. Tie. Okay, I'll start with MPCA. In looking through the bill, you guys do have some increase in some of your penalties and also some of the permitting that you've got. And I'll be specific on this particular one. I think that you're going to find that on 75, 74, 75. Maybe not. I just had it. Well, I'm going to explain it to you. Maybe you'll find it. It deals with a new requirement that you're going to have as far as a 30-day report, a report that has to come out. It's due within 30 days.
74.
And if it's not in, there's a $50 a day penalty for the first 30 days, and after that's $500 a day. And I'm wondering. Okay, 76, yep, thank you for that. Page 76. And I'm actually wondering on that.
76.26, Mr. Johnson.
Where that came from. And I believe, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you'll find the content of what that involves back on 74.8. And where that came from, and that seems like a pretty stiff penalty. And my concern, and this is for the sewer systems, I believe, but my concern is that you're taking some of the cuts that the governor's proposed and maybe trying to backfill them with higher penalties.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Green, this provision is part of the permitting efficiency proposals. And so what we're looking at here is there is a couple sections of the bill that we're trying to create both an incentive structure and a carrot and a stick, so to speak. So we have the certification for consultants that we're looking at. I don't have the section in front of me, but the other part of the accountability part of this is the lines that you're referring to on 74.8 through 74.18, and then the corresponding fee amount or citation amount on page 76. What this is intended to do is we do have an issue with receiving timely responses in certain cases from professionals working on behalf of a permit applicant. So the project proposer is the company, for example, and then we have maybe a consultant working on their behalf. Sometimes in those cases, the project proposer doesn't even know that their consultant is not providing timely responses back to the agency. So what this is meant to do, and we started at a very low amount, $50, but that does ramp up, you're correct, to $500 per day. I think we're open to dollar amounts, and this is mostly to start a conversation. We want to make sure that we're putting a little bit of skin in the game for the folks who prepare these permit applications on behalf of a project proposer, so that they're kept accountable as well to timelines.
Senator Green.
Thank you for that. And then the other question, and we could talk about the fines, I guess, or the other question would be from page 66 on closed landfill investment fund. A few years ago, and this has come up before, we established State Board of Investment to be investing the money instead of having the agencies have it. And it looks like starting at 66.27 in this bill, you've stricken a lot of language, and one that said that you had access to $4.5 million for the closed access landfill investment, and maybe another $9 million if it was an emergency you needed it. And all that is stricken out, and it looks like now you'll have access to all the money in this account at any time. And I'm wondering if there was a special need that you thought you're going to have for that, and why you want to be able to pull this money out of the investment accounts.
Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chair and Senator Green, excellent question. This particular investment fund is required, or is intended to cover the entirety of 114 different closed landfills that the state has taken responsibility over in the 90s. So we have responsibility over those in perpetuity. For the rest of all time, we have to ensure that those landfills are not impacting the environment and human health. So as this fund was maturing over time, the agency did not have access to that. The intent when this fund was created was to give the agency access after 2020. The language was unclear, and so as we've been looking to access the fund, we started small with a small amount per year, this 4.5 million. I know that's doesn't seem a lot of small amount, but 114 landfills is quite a bit to manage in the closed landfill program. At this point, we are getting to a stage where some of these landfills are becoming a bigger problem, and so we do anticipate maybe some additional issues coming on the horizon. That is one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is that we do want this to operate long-term, just as the remediation fund does, where we keep our staff amount under our ongoing staff number under the interest amount that comes in. But if we do need to access it, we have immediate access to prevent an impact to human health and the environment. So that's the intent behind the statutory appropriation.
Senator Green, follow up? Or?
Well, yeah, I'm not really sure that you didn't have that with access to about $13.5 million already, but we can discuss that later. I got one more question for you, and then I have a colleague that wants to ask questions of the MPCA and to stay in that flow, so if Mr. Myers wouldn't mind staying there for a little bit until he's done. The other question is, do you have a total on any fee increases or penalties that you're proposing in here?
Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chair and Senator Green, if you're referring to the amount, the penalty amount that we referenced earlier, we do not have an estimated amount that would generate in revenue. It is truly for situations that we find ourselves in, and we believe that with the 30-day timeline before these fees would, these fines would hit, that, you know, they wouldn't need to be used very often, but, so I don't have an estimate for you on the total dollar amount. Between the actual, if you're asking for a number of different fines that are proposed, I think
Or
that-
fees.
Or fees, I think that's the only new fee. There are fees that are that the stewardship program under the e-waste provisions would assess to producers defined under the law. So those are fees that the agency would not collect. Those would be assessed by the product stewardship organization for the work of recycling and collecting electronics waste and batteries. But those are not fines that the agency or fees that the agency itself would assess.
Senator Green.
Mr. Chair, I'll hold off now until other questions are asked, then I'll switch over to the
So
DNR.
just so I'm clear, we are, this bill, and this is, I like how you do this, Senator Hur. You're actually having deep discussions about this, but this is all going to be packaged into your omnibus next week. So it sounds to me like there's going to be some work on this, and appreciate the questions that are there. So Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I'm going to go back to the additional fee and penalty that we were talking about just earlier on the bottom of page 76. What kind of discretionary authority does the MPCA have to not impose these fines? Say, and I think you probably know where I'm going to go with this one, where we've been working with, well, it's actually several different groups that are pursuing, you know, new avenues for wastewater treatment and fresh water, however it may be, in good faith. But the price tag on these things is rather large. They're looking for counties, municipalities, and state assistance on these. Does the MPCA actually have the authority to say, we know that you're working in good faith, you have not yet met our criteria, but we're going to work with you and not impose these fines?
So then sounds like a statutory question. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Lang, this piece of statute is different than I think the penalties that you may be more familiar with, the penalty authorities that the agency has and uses in regular enforcement activities. Those are the administrative penalty order and the civil penalties, and those are between, I think, 115.071 and 116.072. Those are our core enforcement authorities, and those do require that we go through an enforcement matrix where we're looking at, and I think this is actually true of any of the agencies that have regulatory authorities and assess fines and penalties for enforcement. You have to look at the gravity of the situation and the economic benefit and all of those pieces, and that's required by law that we look at those criteria. For this section, we actually used the field citation authority, and so this is actually a kind of a smaller thing. You'll see throughout here some mentions of, you know, if you $50 per violation of this rule on underground storage tanks, and $250 here for above ground storage tanks. And it's sort of a if we encounter something in the field, or it's used for smaller citations. So there is a lot of discretion in these smaller citations. There's less discretion in the larger enforcement penalty situations.
Interesting. You get the flexibility, Senator Lang.
That was a very, thank you, Mr. Chair, that was a very good non-answer. No, and I understand what you're saying, and this is just an impetus to ask the question, right? Like, is there, maybe there should be effort from the MPCA to say, hey, there are certain circumstances, and this is not an anomaly, and I think as we go further down the road, this is going to happen more and more often, where we need to be more partners with the MPCA, not be so adversarial, especially on the enforcement level. You know, a lot of times we will hear something from leadership in the MPCA that we like, and when it comes to the enforcement level, oftentimes that isn't translated in. I think this section is much like what the matrix that you spoke of, I think. And I don't know, maybe it is just an oral amendment, say that at any point in time the commissioner can have discretion you know, for the well-being of both the fiscal aspect to what we're talking about, and I don't really want to get into that because it's a huge, big, long story, but the fiscal aspect, the state, you know, obviously the huge impact it would have on the state. So just when we're talking about increasing penalties and adding fees all over the place in this bill, oftentimes those.
You want to do your oral amendment now, or you want to wait till next week? What are you thinking? Because I get the discussion on that. Let's get the commissioner, you know, get that commissioner language. You want to think about that? Is
Yeah,
that?
we can talk about it next week too, Mr. Chair, but it's just something where I think having that pathway to making it a little bit easier for the MPCA to say, yeah, we understand what you're doing. We're on board.
I see Mr. Johnson shaking his head. Yeah, members, just in the interest of time, that's a great discussion. Jaskowski wants to go next. I don't see anybody else wanting to go, but, you know, we were hoping to be done with this round of it by 3:30, so, you know, don't bring your Doge amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I'm in a different committee now, Mr. Chair. And I'm not seeing any boards in here, so it's going good. Mr. Meyer, you mentioned, I'm trying to understand kind of the governor's philosophy here. It sounds like this bill is chocked full of fee increases or tax increases for the people of Minnesota. So is the approach that the agencies raise their taxes or their fees in these particular areas, which I understand go to dedicated funds, and then the general fund is somewhat backfilled by removing some original general fund commitments of some sort? Can you explain what that is?
Assistant Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, members, Senator Jaskowski, yes, we have 3 fee proposal packages within the governor's budget. The first one is we're looking at our aquatic invasive species surcharge, which right now it's a $3 3-year fee that is paid at the time of your boat registration. Right now it's $10.60. The governor's proposal creates a sliding scale for those boats based upon size. For example, a pleasure craft 17 feet or less would go from $10.60 to $25 for 3 years, or $8.33 a year for your AIS contribution to try to keep our waters clean and protect them. The next size up, 17 to 19, would go from $10.60 to $29. Previous legislatures have appropriated general fund into that account as well to help deal with aquatic invasive species. And I also should say there's a proposal in the tax bill to reduce some funding, some AIS local government aid that was created about 10 years ago in the tax committee for the counties. Along with that, there's a $660,000 general fund elimination of support for that program. So we are relying more on users to protect our waters, the people who are using these waters with boats, and given the fiscal climate we're in, trying to do our part, frankly, for that. Our groundwater appropriations program package has increases there as well. Those are a little bit more complicated, but and I should say our groundwater fees haven't been raised in the state since 2008. There's a substantial amount of general fund that has been put into the program to subsidize it, as the program we have to protect and make sure that we have waters for generations to come takes a lot of money, right? We have to monitor groundwater, we have to make sure it's clean and protected. We are, again, looking for users to do that, and one of the classic categories is for 5 million gallons or less per year, which a person pays $140 for 5 million gallons of water. So again, $140 for 5 million gallons of water. We're asking to go from $140 to $200, or a $60 increase for 5 million gallons of water. We don't think that that's too outrageous. This water is the most important thing. This would impact irrigators, other users of water, but again, the additional production, the additional value of your crop, if it's irrigated versus non-irrigated, is multiple times that $60 increase of the fee. That proposal does have a $3.4 million general fund support that would be turned back to the general fund. Our other fee proposal would be for our state park entrance fees, which we are working with Senator Herr and others on an alternative to that, but it would go from $7 to $10 for the daily and 35 to 45 for the annual pass. That is to help provide the operations, the experiences that people anticipate within our park system. Without that, we will need to shut down the parks earlier, open them later, and try to keep the toilets as clean as possible. So, I mean, there are impacts there. So overall, the governor's budget has roughly $10 million of fee increases in it, but also returns $4.4 million to the general fund.
You know, one of the biggest things you got, Assistant Commissioner, Minnesota, honestly, got a true story. It's got the cleanest bathrooms, and you look at the public park system, and I can tell you about the Iowa Hawkeyes coming up here for a football game with the Gophers, and it said clean restrooms up ahead. That's why they were late, because they actually got out and cleaned the restrooms. So, Senator Drazkowski,
Thank you, Mr.
You got a
Chair.
follow-up on that, or?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. So that was one of my questions. How much? $10 million of fee increases. I'm just looking at the target here. The general fund target for this committee is $1 million. So it appears that that's probably achieved in the governor's proposal by increasing taxes on users of state parks and of boats and higher permit fees to get the permission of the government in order to access water. So, for instance, the parks, the proposals in here, and I'll just go through 4 of them, which I've run my calculator over. The annual state park fee goes up 28.5%. The second or subsequent vehicle, 34%. State park valid for 1 day fee goes up 42%. And I did skip 2, Mr. Chair. And then the watercraft. So if you have a boat that's a 19-foot boat or less in length, you get to pay 174% increase in the tax that the government wants to take from you, that Governor Walz is going to take from you. And then if it's 19 feet in length or less, it's 137% increase in the tax that you get to pay. The water use fees, not exceeding 50 million gallons, 42% increase. The next category, 71% increase, 75% increase, 78% increase. For agricultural irrigation for farmers, 100% increase, a doubling of the tax for you to get permission from the government. And then the last appropriation fee I see here, which I'm trying to understand more what we're actually charging, is a 300% increase. So, Mr. Chair, members, Senator Herr, I hope that we're not going to simply follow the governor's direction after we increased spending by $19 billion last biennium, raised taxes by $10 billion, and now we see a proposal from the governor that wants to take even more money from Minnesotans because he doesn't have, and this government doesn't seem to have, the wherewithal to go back and look and say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't do just a little piece of that huge piece that we did. That's all we would have to do. All we'd have to say is, out of that 19 billion, you know, we're not going to spend, you know, 500 million or whatever that amount is out of that, but instead, we're raising taxes even more in this budget, and I hope we go a different direction, Mr. Chair. Senator Herr, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. With that, Senator Weissenberg, now you're getting into my time clock. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
The
Senator.
more people talk, the more I think about things, so.
You know, it's like the wheels on that bus, the school bus. Sometimes it's saying less is more, but that's okay. Senator Weissenberg.
You know, as we're sitting here talking about the governor's budget, I think about these billboards, where's Walz? And he's not in our state, and we're going through his budget right now. That's frustrating to me because this is, he governs Minnesota and he's running all over the United States. But that's, I guess, neither here nor there maybe. But I just have one question for DNR.
Yep.
And this is something about irrigators. So I think we've talked about this in the past, but you know, there's a certain amount if they go over, then they get fined. I would like to hope, or I'd like to think that, you know, if they don't go over for 5 years and maybe they go over once, is there a way we can not fine them for using a little bit too much water if they were using, less than half or, some amount? Something to think about. Don't have necessarily an answer, but.
Is that in conjunction with that increase in the 5 million gallons? Is that what prompted that? So, Assistant Commissioner, what do you think on that one?
Mr. Chair, members, Senator Wiesenberg, we work with our appropriators all the time. We meet with the Irrigators Association several times a year. We will go back and have those conversations with our staff.
Constantly. So, Senator Wiesenberg, follow
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, yeah.
You're good. Senator Green, one more question, and then we're going to lay this bill over.
Well, once again, I'm getting timed out. So I'll just get a.
I'm not timing you
So
out,
I
Steve. You can go ahead.
I won't ask you to answer this, but I'll tell you that, I'll just say that if, we'll talk offline or for when we meet next week. I was looking through some of the stuff for the DNR, and it sounds like you've got quite a few positions that are left unfilled. I'd like to know if your budget still includes the wages for those people that are, those positions that are empty. And then we will get probably a little more into the fees, but Senator Skowski did hit on that. And then there's some other.
Well, go ahead, Steve. You're good.
No, that's all right. I know we got to get out of here, and that's fine. I have some questions on for the MPCA too, on explanations on what sanitary districts are. So just so that maybe we'll save time next week. Also, it looks like you're adding semi-fuel tanks to some regulations on tanks, and then some other fees and stuff that are in there. And one thing too, and I haven't really been able to distinguish this, but on page 80 to 81 of the bill, we are getting into, now we're going to be allowing entities to borrow money to acquire land. And that's going to be a real problem. And then also with the cuts in the PILT payments, what we're going to have to do to make up for that in the counties, because I'll have information from some of the counties, including St. Louis County, that's looking at over $1 million that they're going to be losing in PILT payments to, and still have to run their counties. But that'll be good for next week. Thanks.
No, you know what, and you add that to the shift on the human services side of it, and the counties are going to be a little bit upside down. In your list, Senator Green, does that, and you know, Bob, does that, the unfulfilled FTEs, does that get, that underspent dollars, does that go back to the general fund? Does that go over into the general fund, or does that stay within the department? Do you know if maybe?
Mr. Chair, members,
Yeah.
it depends on the funding source. If it's
Gotcha.
general fund, it'd go back to general fund. Game and fish would go back to game and fish.
Gotcha.
And just, we can talk more about this.
Yeah.
Those positions, just because they're unfilled right now, doesn't mean that we'll be filling them in the future, right? So I gave Senate Council and Research a detailed list with descriptions. I should say the department did, not myself. So we can certainly have that conversation. Just really quickly, Senator Green, your comments on page 80, 81, that is for the Regional Parks and Trails Council. That is not for the state of Minnesota, just to help you as you're researching things. So.
I love that. This is good. This has been fun. So with that, members, Senator Fong-Her, thank you very much. Senate File 2077 is going to be laid over for possible inclusion. And with that, thank you. Bob, you're going to stay there, and Tommy, you're going to stay there? Or is going to, no, just Assistant Commissioner Bob Meyer. Senate File 2547, Senator Herr, your Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund Community Grant Program Grants Appropriation. I got 3 people that you have on your list. Assistant Commissioner Meyer, Mike Harley, Executive Director of Environmental Initiative, and James Trice, Founder and CEO of Public Policy Project. So with that, Senator Herr, to your bill.
Mr. Chair, the bill before you today is simply an appropriation from the Environmental and Natural Resource Trust Fund or to the DNR to operate the grant program per statute governing the program. The Community Grants Program was established in statute in 2023, along with the renewal of lottery proceed designation. The LCCMR support great work, but it is not set up to support all great and eligible projects out there. So in addition, an example, the LCCMR process is oversubscribed. This year, LCCMR received 400,000 proposals asking for over 350 over 350 million for the 2026 RFP. Demand is high, and this is an opportunity to help get more trust fund dollars out there to support and enhance our environment, as well as creating the next generation of stewardship with the community program that are in place in this legislation now. This new program will help smaller nonprofits, municipalities access the fund. As we have already heard in the past, their struggle accessing the LCCMR fund. The grant program will run by DNR and have the advisory council to advise the DNR and review funded project annually. The program also requires reporting to the legislature and has a clawback provision for any unexpended dollars. So I'll stand by for question, and also if Mr. Bob Meyer want to talk more and other testifier want to speak more, they're welcome to come over.
Sure, Senator, with that, you want to do it the same way we did it before? You want to get the testifiers and then members want to have the dialogue with you? So Assistant Commissioner Bob Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, for the record, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner DNR. I just want to provide a brief overview of our grant-making opportunities, our work on the community grant program to date, and our grant program structure. DNR manages $165 million annually in grants for over 50 grant programs. This includes administrative grants out of the trust fund and legacy funds, including partnering with Legislative Commission on Minnesota Resources staff to oversee pass-through grants for those funds. All DNR grants are managed in accordance with Minnesota statutes and the Office of Grants Management policies and procedures, DNR grant policies, and federal laws and policies. The work on the community grant program to date, we've been working with the group since the legislature passed the bill last year. The past year, organizations that advocated for the ENRTF Community Grants Program formed a working group to draft recommendations to the DNR Commissioner on the structure of the Advisory Council, grant opportunities, and outreach. After the successful passage of the amendment, the DNR began to work with planning, or move from planning to implementation. Currently, we're focusing on advisory council creation and selection process, and I'm making sure that all statutory requirements for members will be met, including experience, geographic spread, and community membership. We're also working to ensure that we are ready to implement the program once funding is appropriated. In the grant program structure design, the DNR is focusing on risk control and mitigation measures to prevent fraud and ensure accountability, transparency and ease of application and granting process for grantees, support for variation in organizational capacity and potential applicants, and other issues as they come up. We understand the expectations placed on this funding. We have several decades of experience administrating ENRTF grant pass-through dollars. The Community Grants Program will build on current DNR best practices in grant management and risk mitigation, which were developed for pass-through grants and other grant programs. The DNR will continue to consult with the Office of Grants Management and other appropriate resources to build on this approach. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. And with that, and we're getting another chair. Well, actually, James, come on up. James Trice. Mike Harley, Executive Director, Environmental Initiative. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Hoffman, members of the committee. My name is Mike Harley. I'm Executive Director of Environmental Initiative, a nonprofit that brings together business, government, nonprofits, and communities to tackle environmental problems together in collaboration. I'm here to express our organization's support for Senate File 2547, the bill to appropriate dollars from the Environment Natural Resource Trust Fund to the new Community Grants Program. The LCCMR provides essential funding for important priorities, as we've heard, but it does not work for everyone. Navigating the LCCMR process requires time and resources, and that means that large, established organizations typically benefit, while rural groups, tribes, small organizations, community-based groups are often left out. Environmental Initiative began working with rural and urban community leaders and statewide environmental groups in the summer of 2021 to address those barriers that are faced by smaller organizations. The group includes members from the Red Lake Nation, from COPAL, from the Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships at the University of Minnesota, the Environmental Justice Coordinating Council, the Initiative Foundation in Little Falls, Rainbow Research, and many others. This coalition of statewide leaders worked together for over 4 years, identifying barriers and identifying ideas that might help us overcome those barriers. We then worked with the legislature to design a solution, which was passed into law in 2023 as the Community Grants Program. With voters' overwhelming support in 2024 to renew and expand the trust fund, Minnesotans clearly signaled their desire for public investments to benefit all communities, not just those with the resources to work their way through the LCCMR process. Senate File 2547 follows through on that mandate by fully funding a program designed to meet communities where they are and to support community-led environmental solutions statewide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike Harley. And next we have James Trice.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hoffman, members of the committee. James Trice, founder and CEO of the Public Policy Project, co-creator of the Environmental Justice Coordinating Council. Part of the coalition supporting the expanded use of the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund for the Community Grants Program. I'm here today in strong support of Senate File 2547 to emphasize why funding this program is critical for communities we serve. As you know, assets of the fund shall be appropriated by law for the public purpose of protection, conservation, preservation, and enhancement of the state's air, water, land, fish, wildlife, and other natural resources. The Public Policy Project works with marginalized communities across Minnesota that struggle to navigate the complex and often politicized grant process. These communities have innovative, practical solutions to their environmental challenges, but lack the resources to bring them to life. By establishing the grants program, we have unique opportunities to first protect Minnesota's air, land, and water while improving public health, support communities overburdened by pollution or lack of environmental resources like parks, education programs, and 3, reduce barriers to funding, ensuring that most affected by environmental hazards have access and support. The Advisory Council will work alongside DNR to ensure funding reaches the communities that need it the most, fulfilling the intent of Minnesota Statute 116X.03 to expand access to the Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund resources. It will also promote transparency, accessibility, accountability, ensuring long-term program success. Why this matters. Minnesotans are ready for a community grants program like this. We listen to impacted communities and fund their proven solutions. Tree planting, park improvements, native planting resource restoration, energy efficiency projects, local food initiatives, well owner education, and more. Breaks down barriers to funding, ensuring historically excluded communities get a seat at the table, and expand benefits from the Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund, driving environmental progress for all Minnesotans. This program isn't just an investment in environmental protection, it's an investment in equity, innovation, and a healthier future for all Minnesotans. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bryce. Members of the committee, any questions for Senator? Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Senator Herr for bringing this bill forward. I'm thrilled with this program. I'm glad it can be expanded. We were all very grateful when the lottery amendment was amended in the fall. I just want to remind members that every one of the counties we live in overwhelmingly approved this with a majority. So this is a program that is well supported throughout the entire state. And expanding these grants, I'm thinking that's what a lot of the people are here to provide support for, will increase the diversity of those types of organizations that are able to apply for them, and I think that's a really good thing. It makes me very proud to vote in favor of this bill. So thank you, Senator Herr.
Senator Herr, I don't see any other questions. You got any other comments? Disposition of this, you want to lay this one over to, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to lay this one over. It's been a long haul. We've been working on this legislation for a long time based on the hearing from the community that been kind of overlooked. And then so smaller community, or smaller city, municipality in rural and even community color don't have the capacity to go through the maybe stronger route, the long-term route LCCMR, so this will create that opportunity for them. So we have super majority support from voters, Minnesota voters. That's all. Let's make this happen. Let's put dollars to it. And I'm glad that, you know, it authorized legislature to allocate the dollar instead of automatically pass it to the agency. There may be a different opinion on that, but I think we're on the right track that we legislature assigned the dollars. So I ask for a layover of this bill.
Well done, Senator Hurd. Nice work on this. Senate File 2547 will be laid over possible inclusion into the Environment Omnibus. So with that, Senator Hurd, I see is Senator McEwen in the House. Senator Johnson, so you want to get up there, and Senator Hurd will come back and take the gavel. It was an honor and a pleasure, Senator Hurd. Let me do something I haven't done in a while. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. Senator McEwen is unavailable, so I'm going to present the bill for her. And we'll let Senator Hurd regain his chair and composure.
Go ahead, Senator Johnson-Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill, Senate File 3015, I have to be a little bit in teacher mode. This is a really important bill. It is really important for our state. And what it does is it allows decision makers at every level of government to identify where their water sources are and how they can best manage their water sources for big water users. So big water users would be like the water bottling plant in Elko, or the data centers that we're seeing be more prevalent in Minnesota. Same thing for prescription drug manufacturing facilities, for food producers. For those of you that have been on the bonding tour, you know that as we go to some small communities around the state, actually even a meat processing plant can be a super water user. The challenge that we are going to be facing as we move into the next decades ahead are making sure that we can manage our water and be really smart about where we locate these super users of water. So it's really important. Now, we currently have mapping available, and I'll tell you, it's pretty hard to figure out. It is a very highly technical tool. It's a really cool thing if anybody wants to learn about it. We call these water atlases. And anytime a well is drilled or soil borings are conducted, the DNR and others will take that data, and what they've done is they've mapped all of our underground water, but then they have to do some extraction, what word am I trying to think of? They just have to make some assumptions about all our water is. Okay, so it's not nearly as accurate or as easy to use as, let's say, a city council member might need it to be in order to know if they can approve a permit. This bill will fund a hydrological mapping ability through something called a water availability atlas. And again, it's extremely important as we go into the next few decades to understand where that water is and how we can model if, for example, a bottling plant moves into a small community, how that might impact the wells or any of the other water users in the vicinity. So it's really important. The Senate file presents a solution. It has a state through DNR and MinGeo, which is our local geographic information systems agency, develop a water availability atlas that can take the data that we already have and make it a more easy to use mapping tool, not just for local governments, for businesses who might want to locate in a given area, and help everybody who's concerned about water make better informed decisions about their water use. And with that, I thought I had two testifiers. Maybe not. I have one testifier, Carrie Jennings with Freshwater Society. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Ms. Smith, you can welcome to come to the table as well. Go ahead, Dr. Jenny, introduce yourself for the record.
Chair Hurd, members, Thank you. My name is Carrie Jennings. I'm the Research and Policy Director at Freshwater. We're a water nonprofit that is meant to ensure that water is plentiful and empower citizens of Minnesota to take care of their water. I'm sure that's not our real mission statement, but something like that. Minnesota's a water-rich state. We're seen that way in the nation, but I think you know in your districts that lakes aren't distributed evenly, and that is true of your groundwater as well. But that's really only clear to the people that have done the mapping. And I have participated in that mapping for 24 years at our geological survey and 2 at the DNR under the director prior to Director Smith. So we've invested in this, and we did this mainly to understand pollution sensitivity. But now, since we've incentivized large water users to come to Minnesota, we need to help them find where the water is and where they can avoid water conflicts with other users. Both businesses and local governments and engineering firms designing the new facilities have told us that they need to find this information. These projects move really quickly, sometimes quietly, because proprietary information and competitiveness needs to be preserved. So they might come into an area where they inadvertently will be facing some water interference issues. So we would like to provide a solution for that. We are hearing from city administrators that they don't even know what questions to ask, who to go to, especially cities beyond the metropolitan area where they don't have a Met Council and a groundwater plan with models. So the solution we have proposed is to work with MnGeospatial and the DNR to create maps that already exist at a global scale that are being used by Moody's Insurance to insure water risk for these global corporations, but create them in a way that uses our localized data sets, which are more refined and better for Minnesota. And we can make these customized maps available in a very understandable way for these city administrators and businesses and engineering firms, and also encourage cities to proactively identify those sites where they have water availability.
Thank you, Dr. Jennings. Next is testify, Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair, members, for the record, Katie Smith, Director of the Ecological and Water Resources Division at Minnesota DNR. Thanks for the opportunity to provide comments. The DNR shares concerns with water use and ensuring water is being used sustainably. We have identified potential limitations of such an atlas. It would not be able to predict water availability at the scale of an individual site. We want to urge caution that any sort of map that characterizes availability of water should not be used to cite wells. Maps of this sort are general in nature and do not imply that an aquifer capable of producing water exists in an exact location. County-scale geologic and groundwater atlases are still being completed for large portions of the state, and atlases for some counties are also being actively updated. As that work is completed, periodic updates to the statewide atlas would be needed to reflect new information and understanding. The atlas could be overly broad, especially in areas that do not have a completed hydrologic atlas, potentially leading to misinterpretation. The citing methodology would need to consider how much water is needed, the timing and rate of use, potential impacts on nearby groundwater-dependent resources and wells, water quality requirements, how the water would be used relative to Minnesota's water use priorities, potential for cumulative impacts from other nearby high-capacity users, if there's any anticipated discharge and the properties of that discharge. We'd be glad to work with the authors on this language.
Thank you. Any question from member? Senator Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Ms. Smith actually answered some of my questions, which is, aren't you already doing this? I think you already are doing your mapping. There's no fiscal appropriation in this bill. It kind of worries me. And the other question I had was also, I think, answered, which is this going to eliminate some of the process that has to go through when applying for permits? And it sounds like that's not the case either. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of need for the bill, because we'd be having them do what they're already doing. So I don't think it's probably proper to bring it forward at this time. Thanks.
Senator Johnson-Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Senator Green. I just want to emphasize that we do have a fiscal note in the House. I think they're using $300,000. We do have the mapping already in preparation to sign on to this. I tried to use the mapping, keeping in mind that I've taught GIS and CAD at the university for over 30 years. It was really hard for me to figure out. And so our intent is not to duplicate our efforts, but rather to make a more user-friendly tool. Our concern, if anybody has read, like I have, and not to cast aspersions, but for example, in Elko New Market, where they approved the water bottling plant, and now they're having all kinds of challenges with private wells, because their wells are the water's being drawn down. This would help a community like the township board or the city council or the town board in a community like Elko New Market, where they don't have any expertise, be able to easily identify at least some basic information about the dangers of carte blanche approvals. It will certainly not be our last attempt, but it is a movement to start this process. I have a lot of trepidation about large water users that are allowed to come into these communities. We have many, I don't want to mention any of them, but there are many disputes and many challenges around the state already from large water users who, it sounds like a great thing to approve any of this, or even like in Austin, where they have Hormel, they have large water users there. This allows the governing agencies at some of these smaller towns to really be able to start at least thinking about what the super users are going to do to the farmers and to the small communities. So it is not a final solution, Senator Green, but what it does is it helps to make a tool more available. I welcome very much the DNR's input. I am not a water expert here, but I am water intuitive enough to know that we have to start protecting our water, or we are going to see what others have seen across the nation, where uninformed water permitting is causing a problem. Did I say anything that you would disagree with? Okay, thank you, though. I totally appreciate what your comment is.
Senator Green, any follow-up? Further discussion, members? Well, thank you, Senator Johnson Stewart, for also standing for Senator McEwen. I think your knowledge in GIS is actually an added support for this testimony as well. Any last remark before we lay over this bill for possible inclusion?
No, other than I really am going to continue to work with Senator McEwen and the DNR and others who care about water. I think we are on the cusp of a big moment where we need to be thinking really strategically about how we're using our water and how we're protecting it for our primary objective, which is drinking, bathing, and cooking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and we'll now lay over Senate File 3015 for possible inclusion. Going next is Senator Hauschild, Senate File 593. And while Senator Hauschild is making his way to the testimony table, I want to thank Senator Hoffman earlier for chairing while presenting the bills. And Senator Hoffman are very, very good at keeping this committee moving forward expediently. And so if need to, we'll call him back to get this moving along. But I'm sure folks will stay on time. Back to our guideline earlier that want to testify to stay within 2 minutes of your presentation. So anytime you're ready, Senator Hauschild.
Mr. Chair, if you wouldn't mind, I was thinking about just sort of testifying on both bills. They're both just appropriations. It might just be easier, or I'll present my comments and then we can jump to the second bill if we need to, but I thought it might just be easier if I did that. Is that? Okay, it's okay if we just stick to one.
So.
Yeah, I just want to be efficient with time, that's all.
So, anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to present Senate File 593, bipartisan legislation to responsibly invest in ATV trail infrastructure across northeastern Minnesota. This allocates essential funding directly from Minnesota's ATV dedicated account, sourced from ATV gas tax revenue, making them a reinvestment by ATV riders into the trails that they actively use and support. Senate File 593 provides targeted funding for multiple ATV projects throughout St. Louis County, facilitating trail development, engineering, permitting, and construction. Joining us remotely today to discuss the bill is Paul McDonald, who is a St. Louis County Commissioner, and representatives from the Northeastern Regional ATV Joint Powers Board.
Go ahead with this testifier, Mr. Paul McDonald on remote. Do turn on your camera and audio.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we do loud and clear, and it seemed that you are in San Francisco.
Well,
But
I
keep
would
your
have
camera
loved
on.
I have my camera on. I can see myself, but
Please.
I don't know.
We can see you.
Okay. I would have been there in person, but we have 10 inches of snow in Ely, so I'm sort of stuck here. But thank you, Chair Herr and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Paul McDonald. I'm a St. Louis County Commissioner and the Chair of the Northeastern Region ATV Joint Powers Board. I'm here today to strongly support Senate File 593, which appropriates funding critical to the development and expansion of ATV trails in St. Louis County and the Duluth area. Thank you to the author, Senator Hauschild, and Senator Hoffman, Farnsworth, and Kupek for signing on as co-authors. ATV riding isn't just a popular outdoor activity. It's a significant economic driver for our communities in northeastern Minnesota. A recent study by the University of Minnesota Extension showed more than 219,000 rides on our St. Louis Lake and Coochin County trail systems in 2023, with a positive economic impact of more than $35 million, directly supporting thousands of local jobs and small businesses. This impact is particularly evident in northeastern Minnesota, where ATV tourism has revitalized rural areas, attracting visitors statewide and beyond. Specifically, Senate File 593 would allocate vital funding to support projects including the Seven Beavers ATV Trail, the Lumberjack to Brookston ATV Trail, and the Quad Cities Trailhead. Each of these projects not only enhances the riding experience, but also boosts economic activity in our region by increasing visitor stays, supporting local businesses, and creating direct and indirect employment opportunities. Moreover, the proposed Duluth area ATV route study would lay the groundwork for essential connectivity, linking the Duluth area to existing trail networks and opening opportunities for regional collaboration and economic growth. I urge you to
Mr.
support
McDonald,
this,
go ahead with your conclusion.
ensuring sustainable funding that will significantly benefit our economies and the residents who rely on responsible and accessible outdoor recreation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And there's two incoming testifier. Since you just signed on, just want to note that we allow each testifier 2 minutes per their presentation. So welcome, Ms. Susan Sherbert. If you're online, turn on your camera and also your microphone. Okay, if not, Mr. Medicine.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I am actually testifying for Bill SF 594, as is, I believe, Willis Madison. 594, not 593.
Correct. I think that perhaps okay. Why don't we hold on that just a second then? So Hauschild, can we do your amendment on
Yep.
593
Just gonna
first
ask that.
so that we don't get, segue? So Senator Hauschild moved that, the amendment A2 in the back. And it's posted online.
Yeah, it's in their packet, Mr. Chair.
It's in package.
Yep.
Okay, if not, maybe our intern can pass the amendment over.
Yep.
And this is in regard to Senate File 593. Sir Hauschild, maybe you can speak a little bit about the amendment.
Yeah, this is just, Mr. Chair, this is just getting the bill in the shape that I wanted. It adds $100,000 in fiscal year 27 appropriated from the all-terrain vehicle account in the Natural Resources Fund to the Commissioner of Natural Resources for All-Terrain Vehicle Grant and Aid Program.
Okay, all in support of the Hauschild A2 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay, motion prevail. Okay, back to the testifier. See, is Mr. Madison and Ms. Schubert, both of you are here to testify on Senate File 594, correct?
Mr. Chair, I did separate the bills out. I was initially going to combine them, but I did separate them out, given I thought it would just be easier for us to do. Yeah, I separated them out, so I haven't gone to 594 yet.
Okay, so let's finish the business on 593 first then.
Okay.
Okay, are we good? Any question from members? Discussion? Okay, all right. Well, we'll lay over Senate File 593 as amended for possible inclusion. Okay, now Senate File 594.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 594 supports vital trail expansions and connectivity, including funding for the Voyageurs Country ATV Trail System and the Prospectors Loop Trail System. Testifying today in support of Senate File 594 are Nick Wagnum from ATV Minnesota and the Prospector Loop ATV Club, and Tom Doherty from the Voyageurs Country ATV Club.
Welcome, and state your name for the record.
I'll go first. My name is Nick Wagnum. I'm the president of the Prospector Loop Alliance. I'm also the secretary for ATV Minnesota. The Prospector Loop is a nonprofit club made up of representatives from Ely, Babbitt, Tower, and Lake County. We've been around for about 12 years now, and our goal is to connect 4 communities with about a 250-mile trail system. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today and for our request for funds from the ATV dedicated account. I'd like to thank Senator Hauschild and sponsors for this bipartisan bill for right-of-way acquisition, permitting, and construction of trails and a new trail bridge within the Prospector Loop Trail System. This is part of the Connect 4 projects that we've been talking to you about for the last 4, 5, 6 years. We've done some work on the other ones that have been completed. For instance, to connect Babbitt to Hoyt Lakes and to the Iron Age OHV Park, that's been done. The Bear Run segment, which connects the David Dill State Trail, Taconite State Trail, to a network of existing roads and resorts. That's almost done, should be completed here early this spring. And this summer, we're looking to make connections from Tower to the Boys Fort brand properties on Highway 169, as well as to the Pfeiffer Lake area, which will connect to the Voyager and Quad Cities ATV trails. So the final part of Connect 4 is rebuilding the connection from the Cloquet line to the Echo Trail near Ely. This includes the railroad grade section that crosses the Range River. That railroad grade was in place for logging in the boundary waters, believe it or not, before it was the boundary waters. So that railroad grade has been there for quite some time. We're also looking to cut some costs by reusing a bridge that is being replaced in a different segment of our trail system. I'd like to point out that most of these routes are also open to highway licensed vehicles. And the OHV program is probably the only group out there that is actively providing funding, volunteers and equipment to assist different agencies, including the DNR and the Forest Service, in maintaining those routes so that they remain open to all vehicles and the public. The Connect 4 projects have been reviewed by the DNR's Tower Office, recommended for funding by ATV Minnesota State Organization. We're also part of the statewide master plan of ATV trails in the state. Your support for our request will help further ATV opportunities in Northeast Minnesota, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next testifier, Mr. Bisty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair here, and committee members. The opportunity to testify here in support of Senate File 594. And thank you to Senator Hauschild and your co-authors on this bill. My name is Tom Doherty. I represent Voyager Country ATV Club, and I'm here to ask for your support on this bill, which provides critical funding from the dedicated ATV account to continue developing the Voyager Country ATV trail system. Our trail system spans across northern St. Louis County, connecting communities of Crane Lake, Cook, Bike, and the surrounding areas. This system provides a vital link between the state forests, the county lands, and public access points. allowing riders to safely travel through some of the most scenic and rugged terrain in Minnesota. It also ties into the Prospector Loop system, creating an interconnected network of trails that enhances regional tourism and recreational opportunities. This will be the first segment of ATV trail constructed in Kunesh County. The communities of International Falls, Rainier, Little Fork, and the surrounding area are very enthusiastic and are looking forward to getting connected to the trail system. One thing I've noticed over the years is that outdoor recreational opportunities such as ATV trails have convinced people to relocate to our communities. This influx of new residents helps fill vacant positions in our businesses, increases enrollment in our schools, and contributes to the local tax base. Senate File 594 will allow us to complete key trail connections, enhance infrastructure, and continue to build a sustainable, environmentally responsible trail. Members, this is not just a bill. It's an economic and community investment. Supporting Senate File 594 means supporting businesses, families, outdoor enthusiasts who depend on these trails. And on behalf of Voyageur Country ATV Club, I strongly encourage you to support this funding and help keep Minnesota a premier ATV destination. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. I have 3 other members on the list here, 2 online, and one is Bruce Bisty. Is he already testified or a minute?
No, he's not coming.
Oh, he's not here, Mr.
He's
Chair.
not here. Okay. So let's go to the 2 members online right now. We called them earlier for a different bill, but if you're ready, Mr. Madison or Ms. Schubert?
Well, I'm ready, Susan Schubert.
Okay,
I
go.
testify 594, yes. Good afternoon, Chair Herr and committee members. My name is Susan Schubert, and I'm with Minnesota Public Lands Coalition. As millions continue to pour into funding motorized recreation trails with bills like SF 594, we believe practical measures are necessary to maintain areas offering rich trail destination experiences. One measure, supported by the 11 tribes of the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council and the Minnesota Association of Townships, adds consistent early input into the planning process after trail alignment is proposed. Another important measure wanted by backcountry hunters and anglers and many other groups is access to designated and mapped trails only, unifying state policy and preventing more habitat loss. Minnesota Public Lands supports these and all current hunter and trapper exemptions. We believe that practical measures are necessary due to the fact that there are 8,828 ATV miles already in the Forest Trail Inventory System and 100,000 miles accessible to ATVs statewide, including all county miles. In the bill documents, there are 2 excellent maps that show trail density. There are also over 500,000 registered machines in the state now. The DNR cautions everyone that funding to maintain these trails on public lands is tight. In the DNR's new off-highway vehicle statewide master plan for ATVs, they state, quote, maintenance funding is limited. The plan emphasizes the critical need to take care of the trails we already have. The DNR also stated in its 2023 10-year capital needs report that it had a $480 million backlog maintenance deficit for roads and trails. You will hear the DNR has best management practices in place for planning processes and in its manuals. However well-intentioned, these policies are voluntary and unenforceable. The Voyageur ATV System Phase 2 in this bill proposes to follow a snowmobile route and traverse old-growth forest in areas of high significant biodiversity that host rare and endangered species, including plants and animals, and provide key ecosystem services. This trail alignment is an example of why, as legislators consider SF 594 to fund more trails, we believe you should also put into place common sense measures to protect our public lands for all and for the benefit of the rider community you wish to attract. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schubert. Next, Mr. Madison. Are you online?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Hauschild. My name is Willis Mattson. I respectfully testify in opposition to Senate File 594 on behalf of the Isaac Walton League of America. You'll please find my maps and photos in your packet. I have a master's and a 50-year career in ecology and climate sciences. The motorized recreation sector of our fossil fuel economy already has significant unredeemed greenhouse gases emissions. The proposed Prospector ATV routes you see on the map funded by this bill has additional unredeemable impacts to natural carbon sequestration and on biologically significant ecosystems that were not disclosed in the project's EIW. The cost-free natural carbon capture benefits provided by spruce bogs, peat bogs, and other wetlands will be significantly and irreversibly diminished by this project. It would place boardwalks and fill through bogs and swamps shown in my pictures, and presumably haul a large bridge over an abandoned and now inundated railroad grade to span the Range River, less than 2 miles upstream from the Boundary Water Canoe area. This old railroad grade is sunk and largely recovered ecologically with the help of beavers that have reclaimed it as part of their expansive system of dams. Naturally fluctuating water levels, in addition to what's caused by beaver, will make construction, use, and maintenance of this ATV trail very problematic, if not impossible. The bank-to-bank span across the Range River alone measures about 650 feet, making the engineering of this bridge site challenging and expensive, and adverse impacts on adjacent wetlands unavoidable. The wildlife, like the nesting pair of trumpeters in my last picture on the melting Range River this week, will unquestionably be disturbed by the construction and ATV use of the route. The project should not be funded and alternative routes considered, assuming the climate impacts from this activity are somehow redeemable. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members? Certainly.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a question. I just appreciate the bill. Thanks for bringing it forward today, Senator Hauschild. You know, this is an area where we go back many years working on projects like this, and compliments to both the testifiers. You know, the ATV groups have worked hard to get this funding. It's your money. It's been your money for as long as it's been around. That's what it's there for. I'm looking forward to using some of the trails, so thanks for bringing it up.
Senator Hauschild?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would concur with Senator Lang's comments. You know, these ATV clubs do pretty incredible work in our communities. I see these trails as not just an opportunity for folks to get outdoors and see the beautiful landscape that is northern Minnesota and greater Minnesota, but it's also about connections. And I mean that in a literal way. I mean, we are quite literally connecting not just communities in northern Minnesota with one another, creating more commerce, helping with the shoulder seasons around tourism, but we're also bringing other Minnesotans up to our region to experience the outdoors. I think it's important to note that everybody has different ways that they enjoy the outdoors. Some people like to go to the boundary waters to canoe. Some people like hunting and fishing. But not everybody experiences the outdoors in the same way. And one way that folks do get to see the outdoors, like actually see it, go into our forests and see what it is that Minnesota is special for, is through ATVs and snowmobiles and gas and electric powered vehicles. I think that's important to note, right? Like, how else do we experience these opportunities than giving people those opportunities? And I think that's what this is about. And I think Senator Lang is exactly right. This is a dedicated account. These are, money that are paid by ATV owners that go to a dedicated account for trails just like this. So I'm excited to see the connections that these additional trails will make, and I'm excited to ride them myself, and I appreciate the clubs that do this great work, and I appreciate you hearing these bills, Mr. Chair, and considering them in your bill.
Thank you. Sarah Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill forward. One thing, everybody here respects nature, but we can use it safely also. I worked at Camp Ripley for almost 20 years, and there's tanks driving around and everything out there. And Camp Ripley has environmental awards every year for having great environment. And there's species you can't find anywhere but there. So when I hear things like, oh, the environment's going to melt because we're driving four-wheelers through it, these guys aren't going to drive off the trails and ruin the environment. We can do it safely. We can do it smartly. So I appreciate that. I don't like hearing some of those things where we just use these scare tactics to try to make some of these bills stop. Things will be done fine, and this is good. We need money in the economy. If we just live in a national park and no one can work here, where am I supposed to go? So let's do it smartly. Let's do it environmentally friendly, but it'll be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll lay Senate File 594 for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Next is Senator Kunesh. Senator Kunesh, I'll leave it to you, whichever bill you want to begin. Looks like you're choosing 2058 to go first. Okay. So, Senator Kunesh, to Senate File 2258.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 2258 is an agency bill for the Environmental Quality Board. This bill recognizes tribal sovereignty by allowing a tribal government to directly petition the state for an environmental assessment worksheet instead of having to collect 100 signatures for their petition under the current process. This is a more appropriate reflection of the government-to-government relationship between the tribal nations and the state of Minnesota. There is nothing about the environmental assessment worksheet or petition process that is otherwise changed by this bill. The petition still needs to include material evidence showing the potential for environmental impacts, and this has been a direct request to the Environmental Quality Board, informal and informal consultation with tribal staff. And I have one testifier here, Mr. Chair.
Well, welcome, Ms. Nusher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Catherine Nuschler, Executive Director of the Environmental Quality Board. I don't really have much to add to what Senator Kunesh said. This isn't something that was brought forward to us in multiple conversations with tribal environmental staff, again, as a recognition of tribal sovereignty to allow that petition to come from a tribal government, recognizing that they represent their citizens. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any question from members? Senator Green has an amendment. Senator Green, can you explain the amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will. It's A1 amendment. It'll be passing it out. Until it gets there, basically, it deals with the language in the bill on line 3.5, where not less than 100 individuals who reside and own property in the state. We have dealt with this before in the past, where a project can be in northern Minnesota, and someone who wants to slow the project down can come to Minneapolis, for instance, and stand in the mall, which has happened, and ask people to sign a petition. And we don't even know if those people know what it's for. But what my amendment does is it says that it changes the language in that to say, first of all, that 100 individuals who sign that have to reside within the county where the proposed action is undertaken, and then it would take 150 individuals who reside or own property in one or more of the counties adjoining the county where the proposed action will be undertaken. And what that does is it keeps it on a local level, and the people that are being impacted it and understand it are the ones that would be able to require the extra worksheet.
Senator Kunesh.
I would invite my testifier to respond to that. It seems like it's basically returning it to its original form, but upping it by 50 individuals, and so.
Director Nuschler.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Kunesh. Mr. Chair, we have been looking into this. I know it's a provision that's in a bill that's going to be up tomorrow as well. In more than half of the petitions that we've received in the last, in 2023 and 2024, 90% or more of the signatories did in fact own property in the affected or adjacent counties, and in 2/3 of them it was more than 80%. So we really don't see that we have a ton of petitions that are having a lot of signatories that are coming from outside of the affected area. It does tend to be those that may be in important areas that are important for cultural reasons. One of our concerns about this language too, about adjacent or adjoining, is precisely how it might be interpreted, because there are many instances where counties might appear adjacent, they're sort of diagonally opposite, but they're not adjoining. So you might have people that are very much impacted by a potential project, but don't technically live in an adjoining county just because of the way the counties lay out on the map. So we do have concerns about that making it smaller, the area for which signatories could come from.
Senator Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If what the testifier says is true, then there's no problem with this language, because if you're already getting the signatures from there, then you would have that. And I do know of cases, and I did not write them down, but I do know personally of cases where we've had issues in our district where these petitions were brought forth from people living outside the area that did not have impact. And so I think it's a reasonable amendment. And Mr. Chair, I'd ask for a roll call on this.
Okay, roll call has been asked. Senator McEwen, your point on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask that we don't accept this, this amendment at this time. As it was stated, there will be a hearing on this tomorrow, and I think that that would prove to be a better place to make any changes. And so I would ask for a no vote on this, this amendment.
Okay, Senator Hauschild.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Kunesh, and thank you, Senator Green. Yeah, I concur with what Senator Kunesh is saying. I have a bill tomorrow on permitting reform, and I've been working with stakeholders on all sides on this exact issue, and talking about sort of the petition and what that might look like. So if possible, I'd like to keep those conversations going and have the hearing tomorrow and be able to talk about this issue more. But I see what you're trying to do, Senator Green. I just think more conversations are needed. So I would be oppositional to this right now, but still having conversations on it.
Okay, we'll proceed with roll call.
Chair Hart.
No.
Senator McEwen. Senator Green.
Yes.
Senator Kowski.
Aye.
Senator Hauschild.
No.
Senator Hoffman. Senator Johnson Stewart.
No.
Senator Kunesh.
No.
Senator Lane.
Aye.
Senator Wiesenberg.
Aye.
Senator Hoffman.
Okay, there's 4 yes and 4 no. Amendment does not prevail.
Thank you.
Senator McEwen, so Senator Kunesh. So we'll lay over Senate File 2258 for possible inclusion. Next is Senate File 1247. And Senator Kunesh, you have an author amendment?
Yes, I have the
amendment.
A2 amendment.
Okay, let's proceed with that. The A2 amendment is in your package, members. Let's proceed with the A2 amendment. Senator Kunesh, can you explain what the A2 amendment is?
Yes. This is basically trimming the original bill down. The original bill had some legislative actions to address some of the threats of pesticides, and so in working with a number of different coalitions, both on all the different areas, we have trimmed the bill down to just work on wild rice policy and water maps, as well as opportunity to put in some awake legislation to protect the wild rice.
Okay, any discussion on the A2 amendment? Senator Drokowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Kunesh. The policy statement, of course, the question is whether we even need policy statements in bills or in law. Senator Kunesh, many members of both parties over the years have questioned why we do this, and I've seen a lot of it lately. However, even given that, if we look at lines 1.4 and 1.5 on the amendment, It is a policy of the state of the state to recognize the inherent right of uncultivated wild rice. So the language is attributing a right to a plant. And I don't know that that's what we should be doing. I think maybe if you want to include a policy statement, which I would encourage going without a policy statement, but if you want to include one, let's maybe talk about the interest of the people or something rather than trying to attribute, I mean, the way it reads attributes an inherent right to a plant, and I don't know that we want to personify plants. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any response to that or comment to that, Senator Kunesh?
I've had a number of people comment to me around that use of inherent right. And Senator Jaskowski uses the word personify, giving the wild rice sort of a human person or human personality. I think in this instance, recognizing the historic characteristic of wild rice, which is a super grain. It has been around in these places for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It holds sacred and cultural significance, as well as spiritual significance to our indigenous people. And for that reason, the use of inherent right or the use of inherent describes the real significance of the uncultivated wild rice. Now, if this statement, policy, or statement, policy statement isn't something that people want to include in here, I would be happy to work with you all on that. But I think given the significance of what we are talking about here with wild rice and the real value of it in the indigenous community, I think it's important to state that it has inherent rights to be existing and thriving in Minnesota, as well as recognizing that, as our state grain, it's been recognized as that significant.
Okay. And Senator Kunesh, you have some testimony. Mr. Chair? Senator Jackowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Kunesh, I remain unmoved by your response. I mean, are we then, again, this is a plant, and I think, when we talk about inherent rights, it's inherent rights of people. And that's what the inherent rights of people to cultivate wild rice is different, or to protect wild rice, or to whatever, but to attribute a human right to a plant, I don't know that that's a good precedent for us to set as a legislature. I think you might be better off just to remove the policy statement. We shouldn't really be doing policy statements, but this would make it very awkward. So if you attributed an inherent right to a plant, if somebody ran that plant over, would there be a right of action for the plant? Is that, I sure wouldn't hope so, but that's the kind of discussion that including language like this might lead to. So I'm not going to offer amendments, Senator Kunesh. I just hope that you either change that or remove it, or just take the policy statement out as it moves. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's adopt the author amendment, the A2 amendment first. All in favor of the A2 amendment, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? No. Motion prevail. Okay, should we go to the testifier, Senator Kunesh?
Sure, would you like me to just explain the bill a little bit?
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and how it's
Explain it.
changed?
Yes.
Okay,
Please
great.
explain the bill.
Great. You know, I just want to thank you for hearing this bill here today, members, and to the chair. As an Indigenous leader and the daughter and granddaughter of Standing Rock Sioux members, I'm really honored to present Senate file and this amended A2 before you, and I will again ask for your support to protect wild rice, Monoman or Psing, to ensure that the grain will be available for future generations. Wild rice holds a profound significance for the Anishinaabe and the Dakota people, and for centuries it's been a critical source of substance and spiritual connection to the lands. Anishinaabe and Dakota communities have harvested wild rice by hand for centuries, ensuring that the continuation of tradition that binds them to their ancestor, their land, and their water continues. Wild rice is Minnesota's state grain because it is a staple food for centuries in the Great Lake regions. Its abundance in Minnesota lakes and rivers and its economic importance to the state's harvest and market is recognized nationally and internationally. Wild rice has been recognized as one of the most environmentally friendly foods on the planet. It requires no pesticides, no fertilizers, only clean water, and shallow areas to thrive. It also provides critical habitat for wildlife. More than 17 species listed in the Minnesota DNR's comprehensive wildlife conservation strategy. It's described as species of great conservation need and use wild rice ecosystems as vital habitat. Wild rice contributes significantly to Minnesota's economy, both through its harvest and the associated industry. The sale of wild rice generates $19 million annually, creating many jobs. The wild rice habitat also benefits waterfowl hunters, who contribute approximately $43 million annually to Minnesota's economy. So with that, members, I just want to recognize that wild rice isn't only a symbol of the heritage of our Indigenous people, but it's the cornerstone of culture for our communities and our ecosystems. And so I ask for your support because we really do need to act now to ensure its survival. Thank you.
Also, thank you for the one who presented us a little gift here, you know, to ease our appetite. See, you have testifier.
Yes.
You have a number of testifiers, but due to our time, we're just going to keep it to 3, and then if the time allow later, we can ask the audience and folks that are in the audience to come forward. But thank you, everybody, for being here. I would like to call Ms. Eugene Summers. Mr. Eugene Summer, welcome.
You guys hear me all right?
Just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment before we start. Wild rice is not just a plant to the Anishinaabe people. It's our life way. It was the reason that we came to these lands to find the food that grows on the water. In our prophecies, it was told that if we didn't find that rice and we didn't take care of it, that we would cease to exist. So it's more than just a plant to us. I just wanted to let members know that. Miigwech. Buju and Dinway Magana Dug, Gogi Magijik, Panes and Dish and a cause, Wabishi Aishi and the Dangal, Babikan, Kakatun Chupa, Monoman, and Chimigwich for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm here representing the Anishinaabe people of the White Earth Nation. We understand that there's new industries coming into the state of Minnesota that have the potential to devastate our wild rice crops. I'm here today to share the concerns of my people and the cultural significance wild rice has to us. Some of the threats that we currently deal with are airboats, wake boats, invasive species, permits being issued without tribal consultation, and non-Indians violating our tribal laws. Last year, there was a huge demand for wild rice. The 2024 season generated over $2.4 million into our local economy, and that went directly to our traditional harvesters. We had multiple incidents last year of non-Indians sneaking onto Lower Rice Lake, which is the largest rice bed in the world, and produces the highest quality and quantity of hand-harvested wild rice. This rice bed is protected by the tribe and is the same rice bed that my grandparents and their grandparents and so on and so forth have harvested on. It's one of the only things that we still do that has not changed. The tribe, it has sustained, this rice bed for a long time, and this rice bed sustains our people. And we plan on having it sustain us for many, many more generations. So that's why it's important that we come here and let you know how important it is to us. I had this came from a band member. I wanted to share this. In our Ojibwe migration story, a prophet came to us. It came to the Anishinaabe people and told them to travel west, and they would know where their home was when they came to the place where the food grows on the water. Menomen is a sacred food and the center of our cultural identity, tradition, and physical well-being. The Anishinaabe people live by the philosophy that if we care for the water and the rice, it will care for us. Wild rice beds are continuously diminished without protection in place. Senate File 1247 is a good start to ensuring the protection for future generations. I just want to remind people that, my people were promised that we would be able to hunt, fish, and gather on all the lands that we ceded to the United States. We asked the state of Minnesota to recognize that, our trust and treaty obligations, and that must be upheld in order for everyone to live on this land. The White Earth Nation is ready and willing to work with the state of Minnesota to ensure wild rice is protected for the next 7 generations. Chimi Gwich Mio.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Summer. Let's go to Leanna Goose. If you're here, okay, come forward and state your name for the record.
Bonjour, my name is Leanna Goose. I am from Leech Lake. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate File 1247, the Wild Rice Act, Pasine Kinyanka or Gunawindun Menomen. I am a co-facilitator and organizer within the Rise and Repair Alliance, as well as a contributor to the research project called Protecting Menomen for the Next 7 Generations. As an Anishinaabe mother, I have witnessed the heartbreaking loss of wild rice firsthand. The rice beds I grew up on are no longer the same rice beds I am introducing my children to, and many of them are struggling. We have taken action on the local level, and I have included some information and pictures of that work, if you all want to see what we've been up to on Leech Lake. And this will help you to understand the loss firsthand and the work that we are doing to try to help wild rice. I am respectfully asking our legislators to bring forward meaningful action at the state level to ensure that wild rice remains for current and future generations. For the following reasons. Wild rice is a remarkable food that requires no pesticides, no fertilizers, as Mary said. All it needs is clean water in a shallow area to thrive. Minnesota contains more wild rice than any other state in the U.S. We are the Menomen stronghold of the world, and that is something worth protecting. Wild rice is more than a food source to indigenous communities. It is central to Anishinaabe, Dakota cultures, and traditions. This plant is our people's connection to the land, water, and our ancestors. Tribes have fought and worked hard to protect this sacred food source and will continue to, but the threats that this plant faces now require collective action to address. Wild rice faces numerous threats from climate change, pollution, invasive species, reckless boating, and when these threats combine, they jeopardize the very existence of this sacred plant. Wild rice was once abundant across the northern part of the United States, east of the Rocky Mountains. However, due to human activities, this is no longer the case. If humans are at the root of these challenges, then we also have the power to be the solution. In Anishinaabe culture, we understand that our survival is intricately linked to the health of plants, animals, and water. We show respect for these living beings through our cultural practices. It is the same respect that we aim to bring to all of Minnesota with this bill. And I just want to clarify that there is a difference between personhood, as Steve said over there. So when you recognize the inherent right of Monoman Piscine to exist and thrive, you're recognizing that this plant gives you life. And I just wanted to make that clear and on the record. It is the same respect that we aim to bring to all of Minnesota. Incorporating Indigenous wisdom into our modern-day world is the solution to the climate crisis. Indigenous people have lived on these lands for millennia without destroying them. We recognize and appreciate the love Minnesotans have for their water. This legislation is not a call to end boating, but it is a call for a respectful coexistence between two cultures. Just as we wouldn't drive a car through a farmer's cornfield, the same level of respect should be applied to this treaty-protected food. Treaties are the supreme law of the land according to the United States Constitution. Many tribes are actively working on restoration efforts to preserve wild rice, but these efforts can be quickly uprooted by a boat driving through a wild rice bed or creating a large wake that uproots the plants. Wild rice also absorbs excess nutrients, helping to prevent harmful algae blooms that can lead to fish kills. At the same time, it provides oxygen to the waters through photosynthesis, which supports the survival of fish and other aquatic life. Monoman has helped Minnesota throughout the generations, and now is the time that we need to stand together to help Monoman. We ask that you work together to swiftly pass Senate File 1247 and begin to protect the state grain. Miigwech Bizindawiyag, thank you all for listening.
Thank you. And just for time's sake purpose, I know all the testimonies so far are great, but if we can save the applaud for later and so that we can at least save a few, 10 seconds or so over that. We'll give everybody a big applaud later together. I'm going to call Ms. Mueller, Evan Mueller from MCEA.
Chair Herr, members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to testify on Senate File 1247. I'm Evan Mulholland. I'm the Healthy Communities Director at the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, the MCEA. MCEA is a public interest law firm, an advocacy organization that's been working for over 50 years to defend Minnesota's environment and the health of its people. And we support this bill, and thanks, Senator Kunesh, for your work on it. We support Senate File 1247 because of the importance of wild rice to the indigenous people of our state, to the health of our ecosystems, and to the earth. MCA has long partnered with and stands in solidarity with the indigenous nations that share Minnesota's geography and land and heritage. And MCA actively participates in the Rise and Repair Alliance, which supports this bill and supports the continued protection of wild rice. While we understand that this bill has just been amended to limit its scope, and to emphasize the core aspects of the bill, and we'd like to see a more expansive bill that establishes more clear protections for wild rice in statute. This targeted approach makes sense, and we ask for your support as a committee and as a legislature and as a state.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call Mr. Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, DNR, and Steve Morse to come to the testify table. And following them will be Reverend Hayward and David Todloff. Assistant Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill. Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources, and I'd like to thank Senator Kunesh and all people for bringing this bill forward. First, the DNR does recognize and fully supports the right of Monoman to our tribal partners and to our tribal nations, and that the importance that this race brings to them. We do have some concerns on the bill that I'd like to bring forward, and the first one has been somewhat discussed by Senator Jaskowski, but providing the inherent right to uncultivated rice extends a position to wild rice. It's similar to language that the department was sued by the White Earth Nation over Line 3 several years ago in tribal court. So that does cause some concern for us in there and working on that policy findings, which you don't find in legislation too much. We look forward to working with the author on that. The second relates to the wild rice water maps. In 2008, we did an extensive wild rice project, a report that is still available on our website. But during this, we created a general inventory and map of wild rice waters. This identified 1,200 lakes and rivers in 54 counties that currently contain or historically had wild rice. Over 64,000 acres of wild rice out of approximately 2 million basin acres were found on these waters. The language in the amendment under wild rice maps starting on 1.17 says that we must create maps that show where waters are or have been used for the production of wild rice located in this state. As we heard from earlier testifiers, wild rice will grow in a clean, cool, shallow water. Any place you can take a canoe paddle, stick it into the bottom, stick it into the muck, and if it's the depth of a canoe paddle, rice will grow really well there. I could do a map right now, just draw a line of north of Highway 2 and color in every water body, because primarily rice can grow in any of those waters. So the cost of this will be something we're working on, but I'm not sure what the use of that wild rice, those maps would be, as it's going to cover pretty much most of the waters in northern Minnesota. Thirdly, well, I understand the concerns about damage to wild rice beds. Statute does prohibit the use or the destroying of aquatic plants, aquatic vegetation. That does include wild rice. So a person cannot drive through a wild rice bed in their boat. This would impact the riparian rights of shore owners. Riparian rights are property rights arising from owning shoreland that include the right to wharf out to a navigable depth. There are many property owners, cabin owners, who own shoreline that are in front of wild rice beds. I believe this language may prohibit them from taking their boat from shore through that wild rice bed. Currently, they're allowed to create a navigable, think of it as a driveway to the lake, right? 150 feet approximately, so you can put your dock in there and moor your boats, get in and out. I think this language may prohibit that, or it does need to be worked on. Also, there's some concern of, well, I recognize the need, but greater than slow no wake speed within 150 feet of uncultivated wild rice beds. There are lakes such as Leech Lake, for example, where there are wild rice beds that go through navigable channels that are miles and miles long. Or think of the Mississippi River or other rivers that contain rice that people have to navigate or boat on. This would cause them to operate at a no wake speed for miles and miles and miles possibly, depending on the water body. So, well, we recognize the need to protect our wild rice resource, and the department does whatever we can to work with our tribal nations to do that, and also protect wild rice for all harvesters. I myself am a wild rice harvester. I recognize the importance. Some of the biggest threats are drought. As we saw last year, the rice harvest in many parts of the state was dramatically low because of the drought and the storms that had occurred, but also invasive species. And we need to make sure that we maintain the opportunity to manage these rice beds and waters to prevent invasive species from impacting our important rice resources. With that said, we look forward to working with the author on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Steve Morse. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Environmental Partnership. We're a statewide coalition of more than 70 environmental conservation groups that operate statewide. There's a letter in your packet from our coalition and different members and supporters who are especially concerned about this issue. I will not repeat what's in the letter. I just want to make a few points, and I understand the time is late. First of all, thank you, Senator Kunesh, for bringing this legislation forward and for the committee for considering it. 3 points. Wild rice has been in a long-term decline. We recognize that. There have been lots of attempts to do things about it. We really haven't been effective. There are very real current threats, and there are very real upcoming threats to the future of wild rice. Just this morning, we had a House hearing where there was legislation to undo critical protections for wild rice that we've been struggling to defend for the last 10 years plus. There's legislation actually in the Senate that does that very thing. So there are very real concerns about people trying to undercut current protections we have. So the bottom line is, with this bill, the way I look at it, this is an opportunity for a reset. We need a reset in how we think about wild rice, what it means to our tribal neighbors, what it means to us as a natural resource for our greater environment, and what it means for the quality of our water. So this is a good step in the right direction. As I think was said earlier by some of the testimony, it's a good start. And we have created the problems for wild rice, and to quote the earlier testimony, we have the power to reverse it. And so this is a good step in the right direction, and I encourage your support.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Next, I'd like to call Reverend Hayward and Mr. Tuloff. Following them will be Patty O'Keefe and Annette Drewers.
Hello,
Welcome.
and thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Senators. My name is Reverend Susie Hayward. I serve as a minister at Creekside UCC, a 750-member church in South Minneapolis. And I am here to express my church's support for Senate File 1247 based on two of our foundational faith beliefs. One, the protection of life and clean water that depends on that. And two, the religious freedom of all people and our indigenous neighbors. So one, with respect to clean water, you see this in the bill, you've heard this from other testimony, but life depends on clean water. And we appreciate that this bill is ensuring less pesticide runoff into the waters that are the precious source of life in this state, and want to support that, because without clean water, life cannot thrive. And this is a foundational command from God that we protect life. To religious freedom. So the UCC descends from Congregationalist pilgrims who came here seeking religious freedom. This is a foundational human right and a foundational commitment within this country, but we have a long stain of not protecting the religious freedom of Native Americans. And my own ancestors, congregational ancestors, were involved in some of these actions that have caused harm to the cultural and religious traditions and practices and beliefs, including ontological beliefs, Senator, about the rights of nature. And so we are also here in support of this bill because it defends the religious freedom of our indigenous neighbors. Recognizing the centrality of wild rice and tradition and culture and ceremony, and the need to step up to protect this, to ensure the ability to continue to have this as a central part of tradition and ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Next is David Tuloff. And Patty O'Keefe, do come up to the testimony table. Maybe I'll call Miss Annette Drew as well, if you're here. And welcome.
Hello.
Please state your name for the record.
Yep, my name is Patty O'Keefe. I'm with Vote Solar, and we are part of the Rise and Repair Coalition. I just wanted to quickly say that this bill has been led by Indigenous people here in Minnesota. It's been supported by the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, representing the 11 tribes across the state. In addition to Native people in support of this bill, there are many non-Native people who also support protection of wild rice and the water that allows it to live and thrive. What we do to the water and nature, we do to ourselves. We are not separate. Plants and animals are living beings that have rights to be here just like us. The more we deny this, the more we'll suffer. I'm grateful for everyone who showed up today, and I'll cede the rest of my time to others. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please introduce yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Annette Drews. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I studied wild rice harvest and management across Minnesota and Wisconsin, participated in the Governor's Task Force on Wild Rice in 2018, and co-authored the DNR's 2021 LCC-MAR Tribal and State Collaborative Wild Rice Monitoring Project. I'm asking you to support SF 1247. Minnesotans long have embraced wild rice as their state grain, yet offer the native plant, a plant that is the foundation also of a cultivated industry, few protections, and have too long ignored the people who first gathered this grain. Much of the requested protection around pesticides, I know of harvesters who sell this gourmet native food to Europe and across the U.S. The annual harvest of wild rice is important economically, helping out hundreds who live near or under the poverty line. Currently, there's very little known about some of the ecological needs for wild rice, and that needs to change. This bill also requires consultation with tribal nations and involves them in planning I would also like to make one statement in regards to Commissioner Meyer's reference to the 2008 report. I was co-author of that report. We do need mapping component to this bill. You cannot just pluck wild rice, plop it anywhere, and it's going to grow. I ran into that when I did my research, and I have talked to managers across both states, both tribal and non-tribal. The need for assessing where wild rice grows is immediate. The DNR's current knowledge is limited because we have not had the tools. Recent collaboration with the tribes utilizing LCCMR funds is getting us closer to being able to assess wild rice statewide on a yearly basis. Move this bill forward with much needed funds to accomplish this task. Knowing whether or not and how fast wild rice is declining, that is one of the needs for this map. Thank you for your time. There's more information on the sheet provided.
Thank you. I'd like to call Mr. Preston and Allison Hoyer. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua Preston. I'm a writer, and I'm the attorney for RISE Coalition, which stands for Resilient Indigenous Sisters Engaging. I'd like to begin by saying that while I am an Indigenous person, I am not an enrolled member of any tribe or band, and therefore I'm speaking to you in my capacity as an American who happens to reside in Minnesota. I support this bill because our treaties with the Anishinaabe are the supreme law of the land under our Constitution. Furthermore, the 1836, 1837, 1842, and 1854 treaties each preserve the right of the Anishinaabe to hunt, fish, and gather on ceded lands. This, of course, includes wild rice. These treaties are contracts. They are contracts between the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island and Americans. I want to remind this committee that contracts are the underpinning arrangements that allow for the rule of law by providing stability and predictability between parties. Contracts are the cornerstone to civil society, so much so that we often describe our common rights and responsibilities as people as a social contract. But I want to emphasize that our treaties are actual contracts. They are not optional, and if we as Americans cannot fulfill our obligations at the federal level, then it falls on the state to act. It falls on us to act. We love to carry around our pocket constitutions, but how many of us carry around our pocket treaty books? I cannot think of anything more small c conservative than fulfilling the promises we have already made. These treaties were enacted for our benefits, and therefore, as treaty partners, we are bound to our own ancestors' agreements. How we act now will determine, to the eyes of history, whether our word as Americans is good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to ask folks not to applaud right after presenter, because I think according to our committee rule, I was a little lenient earlier, but now I had to, clamp the gavel. So next testifier, and if following her will be Mr. Hule. Do come forward. Go ahead, welcome, and please state your name for the record.
Okay. My name is Allison Doe Hoyer. I grew up in Rochester, Minnesota. I currently live in South Minneapolis. I'm testifying today in support of SF 1247, the Wild Rice Act. And I actually felt compelled to testify because of curiosity. I noticed that this Senate committee is called Environment, Climate, and Legacy Committee. And directly in response to your question, Senator, about the need for policy language, I felt compelled to ask you all a question of how do you interpret legacy as it relates to your work? And I asked you to consider this as I proceed with my story and testimony. So when I was 17, I was a Rotary Youth Exchange student in Brazil. And in preparation for my exchange year, we were instructed to bring something unique from our state as a gift for our host families. I ended up bringing wild rice to share, and it was perhaps the first time I recognized that wild rice is unique to Minnesota, only really growing here. This cemented for me the recognition that wild rice is special. I still bring wild rice as a special gift when traveling elsewhere, and I have since developed a relationship with wild rice through cooking. In college, I studied linguistics at Macalester, later went on to complete a seminary program at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. And as you may know, a theological education asks you to consider what is sacred and what is the expression of the divine in our lives. And something I still think about regularly from my seminary coursework is a short article by the Potawatomi ethnobotanist Robin Wall Kimmerer. In the article, she points out that the English language uses it to refer to the natural world, rendering a species like wild rice as inanimate in our grammar. But, she points out, the natural world is alive. As a linguist, I share this point to point out that the English language we speak conditions us to think about wild rice as an inanimate object, as an it. But our Anishinaabe and Dakota relatives recognize wild rice as kin, as a valued and sacred species with inherent rights to exist and thrive. So I believe that the Wild Rice Act is so important and the policy language is so important because it helps all of us to recognize wild rice as special, as alive, as sacred, and as inherently worthy of existing. I urge you to please support and pass 1247, the Wild Rice Act, to secure this knowledge in our state laws and protect wild rice for all future Minnesotans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoyer. Next is I'd like to call Gina Peltier to the testify table, and then Mr. Holy, go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today in favor of this legislation. You've heard about how important wild rice is to indigenous cultures. You have heard about treaties, and so I won't restate any of that. What I will simply offer you in this testimony this afternoon is that since the founding of our country, great harm has been done to the Native American people in every conceivable way, and sadly this harm continues today. I urge you to support this legislation and just take this one small step to protect wild rice and clean water, and to say to our indigenous relatives, we value your traditions and we will not continue to enable the cultural destruction that you have suffered. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Peltier.
Chimigwich, everyone. Makade Makwan Dudum, Anishinaabe and Dunjaba, Mikanako and Iniwig, Gina Peltier and Dijinakash. And so my name is Gina Peltier. I am Black Bear Clan, and I am from Turtle Mountain Reservation over in North Dakota. And we are sister tribes with Red Lake. And these past several years, working with wild rice has really shown me how important and how dire it is that we protect wild rice. Like Leanna said, wild rice grew everywhere from Montana all the way over to Michigan, up in Canada. And unfortunately, my elders over in Turtle Mountain say when they were young, they completely thrived off of wild rice. It sustained them. They were independent. And they have been completely devastated to see the disappearance and destruction of it. There's no more wild rice in Turtle Mountain. And so when working over here in Minnesota, it has really opened my eyes of how beautiful it is, how delicious it is, how healing it is to work with it. And not only does it help Indigenous nations, it helps everyone in Minnesota. It will help our economy. Wild rice has been around since time immemorial. It will help and lessen our dependence on foreign entities. We protect wild rice. That will help future generations for infinite time to come to be completely independent and utilize this very beneficial food source that we thrive off of. And I can talk about wild rice all day long. I love wild rice. I eat it all day long. I almost brought me to tears seeing my sisters hand out wild rice to y'all. But like I said, I'm here to testify in support of it because it has disappeared. I've seen it. My elders have seen it. And it is just driving us to work hard to make those sacrifices so we can bring it back. And so I'm sitting here in support of this bill, and I want to thank you all for doing your work and being considerate and kind and really working hard for your communities. So thank you all, and I'm going to ask no one to clap.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Peltier, for your testimony and your politeness as well. We have two online testifiers, Mr. David Toloff and Don Goodwin. Just one? Okay. Can you turn on your camera and microphone and do identify yourself?
Bonjour, Gagayashi, Indigenous Gawaba, Biganikag, and Dunjaba. My name is Don Goodwin, and I'm from White Earth. I am a co-founder of Rise Coalition, and I work for NEBI and Monoman. Water and wild rice. Thank you for allowing me to speak to y'all today and testify. I'm in support of SF File 1247. And I just want to make some comments. I'm not going to repeat what others have said. I'll try my best not to. Minnesota is important and special because of NEBI. We were told to come here where the food grows on the water. That's why, as Anishinaabe people, we are here. Others have said, notice that it is a superfood. Yes, you could live almost entirely off of Monoman. So, in reality, protecting Monoman is protecting our food sovereignty for all. Not just for Anishinaabe, but for everybody. Because Monoman, like others have said, doesn't need pesticides. It grows naturally. And we need to protect Monoman for our future generations. We're culturally connected, spiritually connected, and historically connected. By protecting Monoman, we are protecting the health and biodiversity for animals, plant life, and protecting water, all in one. So, thank you for allowing us all to speak today. And I just want to make one last note, is that the animals are to be our leaders. And we've tried to tell our forefathers and people before us, and in language, to consider the animals, to look to them as our leaders. We've been told you go off and not follow the animal trails. Go off, make your own trails. You'll bring destruction to the earth. So, with that being said, we need to get back on the right trails. Quit trying to make our own trails thinking it's going to be better. Because what have we done as a humans to our environment? So please support 1247. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Ms. Goodwin. Any question or discussion? Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment. I don't know if you want me to talk about it. Well, it's handed out to A4.
Sure. Senator Wiesenberg had the A4 amendment.
This is getting back to what Senator Drzelski talked about. Everything that was said here is true, but giving a plant an inherent right over people is something that is goes against my God and my religion.
Please, even though it may be different from your point of view, try not to disrespect. Go ahead, Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, we need to work together, and that's what we should be doing. And the notes I took were just words that people were saying to me, but I put in my mind babies and unborn children, right? That's important to me, and I have the right to say that. So that's what I'm trying to say. I don't have anything against wild rice, but I said here, and people got to talk, I feel I have a right to call, or to speak. You know, historical context, historic characteristics of rice, you know, has sacred and cultural and spiritual significance. That's great, and I don't disagree, but to me, unborn babies are very important. And when I read an inherent right, and we're giving a plant an inherent right over people, that really bothers me, right? So value of rice and in your community, you know, I value people in my Christian community. We talk about prophecy. I believe in Jesus. We're talking about rice. I believe in unborn children and protecting infants. My God is Jesus, and I believe in life, and I believe in protecting life, and I don't get to do that. My faith is being attacked. You know, the faith I was raised in is being attacked right now. Unborn babies aren't allowed to be born, and that's important to my culture and my spirituality and my God tells me to protect life. Like I said, things I was writing down are just the words you were saying, and that, you know, and you're asking me to support your spirituality, but I feel like mine is being ignored.
Senator Wiesenberg, can you?
Well, no, I need this time. I could keep talking without the gaffes, but the Reverend talked about religious freedom and God and human rights. Well, I believe people also have human rights. You know, if we're going to give this right to rice, we need to recognize that my religion, I believe that unborn babies have a right, and they have an inherent right. So that's why I just want to change the word from inherent right to importance. It's important, right? It's not important. But now we're putting a plant above what human beings are. I can't support the bill with that word that way. Otherwise, I would support it. But we need to work together, and this is just, to me, fueling a divide. You know, and we got, you know, yesterday we got the Democratic Coalition of Satan worshipers thanking Governor Tim Walz for standing by and protecting Satan.
Can we stick to the amendment?
I am sticking to my amendment.
And can you?
I get to speak about my religion. Everybody got to speak about their religion. I'm telling you what's important to me, and this is very important, and I'm trying to work together, and I'm trying to come together, and we need to work together.
So, we hear you loud and clear number of times of the same message. So
my amendment is just changing inherent right to importance.
Okay.
So we can work
Any
together.
Discussion on the Senator Wiesenberg amendment. Senator Johnson-Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Wiesenberg. As another faithful person, I made the changes, and without the understanding of the culture and the religion of the natives, I would be presumptuous if I said it's okay, but I would support this change if it's amenable to Senator Kunesh. And if not, I would very much respect her opinion.
Senator Kunesh.
Thank you. This isn't, when we talk about the inherent rights of uncultivated rice, it's not a religion. It's not a religion in the way that we think of European Christianity. Wild rice is the people. It is of the people. And it's not just that it's important, and I thank you for recognizing the importance of this grain, of this life-giving, you know, it's almost a genetic value within the Indigenous people that we are working with here today. And so while I appreciate you recognizing the importance of this, I know that this coalition that sits behind me, and there are plenty more, recognize and want to recognize the really inherent, the natural right of wild rice as it is within their cultural significance to be stated in this bill. And so with that, I would ask you to vote no on this amendment.
Senator Kowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Kunesh. Senator Kunesh, we did hear, though, multiple times, people testify that this needs to stay in here because it underpins their religious beliefs. Now, we shouldn't be writing your religious beliefs or my religious beliefs or Senator Wiesenberg's or Senator Herr's religious beliefs or anybody else's religious beliefs into law. And that's, given the abundant testimony we had, what leaving this here would do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not, you know, we need either, again, either pass this amendment or remove the policy statement completely or whatever, but we can't create a precedent of writing somebody's religious beliefs into law. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Josowski, if we can stay away from the
Senator
Wiesenberg.
Mr. Chair, I'll withdraw my amendment, but I want you to realize that I can't support it with that in there because that's not what I feel. I can't do it, but and I hope you realize why. And it would be wrong for me to do it that way because I feel like myself isn't being represented if that's there when I'm holding something more important than human life.
Thank you.
May I say something? Just to talk to Nathan. You know, this would be the right step into help you into recognizing and protecting those babies. By supporting us, it would then open the doors for you to then greater protections for those children. And so I would ask you to just support this. And it's not just a tribal thing, it's for everyone. And so I would love to work with you too. And on top of that, beavers need wild rice also.
All right. Senator Wiesenberg, one last comment on the same subject. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that's why I withdrew it, so we can talk. We're not going to vote on it, right? So I withdrew the amendment, and we can talk.
Thank you. I'm glad that further discussion offline will take place. All right, Senator Green.
I do have one amendment too. This amendment was brought to me by former Senator Rod Scoy, who happens to be a wild rice farmer. And he read through the amendment, and although it does indicate that in some places it talks about uncultivated wild rice, he would like to, this is A3, by the way, he would like to have that more distinguished in the bill so it doesn't include the wild rice farmers. You can get that in a second and see how you feel about that.
Senator Kunesh, or any member for further discussion on this amendment?
I have to see what it is.
Senator Kunesh.
So I have a couple people here that would like to respond to this, but also I don't think that adding the uncultivated to this bill makes sense in the fact that, or excuse me, so before wild, insert uncultivated, line 316.
Let's give a minute for Senator Kunesh.
I'm not, Mr. Green, or Senator Green, maybe you can explain to me what this does and why
Senator Green?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Senator, the language, it mimics what you already have in the bill in some places. So your 1.4 talks about the policy of the state to recognize inherent right of uncultivated wild rice. And what this does is it adds that same language in between or in front of every place where it says wild rice. So what it's doing is it's saying that the wild rice farmers aren't included in the wild rice provisions in here, in the uncultivated wild rice. So what it's doing is it's just singling out the wild rice farmers from this bill.
Senator, excuse me,
Senator
Chair,
Kunesh.
could one of my testifiers speak to this?
Yes, and state your name for the record one more time.
Yeah, my name is Leanna Goose, and I am from Leech Lake, and I just wanted to explain there is a clear difference between wild rice, the wild rice, and uncultivated wild rice, or cultivated wild rice, excuse me. I don't know if you guys have cooked with the cultivated version, but it is a lot different, and it is not the same as the plant that we're talking about that grows wildly. And it is something that is farmed, and I just read a research study that said the amount of water that they use to farm that wild rice creates greenhouse gases. It has so little water that it creates methane and other greenhouse gases. And the wild rice is something that grows naturally, and it is something that must be protected and respected. And that's why we are working towards protections for the wild rice. There are already protections in place for the cultivated wild rice, Senator Green, and I know there are a lot of farmers who do that, but I just wanted to explain that we're here asking for protections for the wild rice, because there is a clear, distinct difference, and I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Senator Kunesh.
Yes, thank you very much. We just had to be very clear on this, and Senator Green, we will accept this amendment.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay. Motion prevail. Any further discussion? Okay. Do come forward. Bonjour.
Hello, my relatives. My name is Deborah Topping. This is my husband. We've gone racing together.
Deborah, can you get closer to the mic so we can hear you?
Sorry.
I can hold that.
We've gone racing for 42 years. We've raised our children on this. We've taught them how to gather rice. We've taught our grandchildren how to gather wild rice. When I was trying to decide to come or not today, I was also trying to decide, should I share my wild rice with you all? Because this, like I said, this was the rice that me and my husband had gathered, and this is the only rice that I have left. When we talk about wild rice being our relative, being alive, having inherited rights, it's just like no different than the unborn child that you're talking about, that we also love and care for, right? Because that's what we as Anishinaabe give our people from the very first time they are able to eat, is a bite of Manoman, until the very last is a bite of Manoman. So It's not that it's a personhood, it's the respect. It's the respect we give each other. It's the respect and kindness and love. That's what we're talking about, because that's what that wild rice gives us, right? It was able to give you nutrition. Like you all heard, it's a superfood, right? My culture, what is white supremacy? And I don't say that to insult anybody at all. I too am born into white supremacy. But so what this is saying, so what I'm hearing you say is that because you make the rules, you can't see how important this monomen is to us. You can't see that it's a relative to us. And so you're saying, no, that's not right. But that's what white supremacy is. We just want to live, right? Just like that unborn baby you were talking about. And this is how we live, by protecting what gives us life. I will stand by you all day long to protect that unborn child. So, my relatives, please support this bill. Miigwech.
Miigwech, and I don't know whether you have state your name yet.
Her name is Deborah Topping.
Deborah Topping.
She's
Thank you.
Anishinaabe from Fond du Lac.
Thank you very much for your words of wisdom. Senator Kunesh, any last remark?
Well, I can't really top what was just said here, but I appreciate the fact that you all were here, that you were listening to it, that you took into consideration and understood the significance of this bill and the significance to the people that brought it to us. And so thank you very much, Miigwech Wapilatanka, for hearing our bill, and I hope that you would consider it in your future omnibus bill.
Okay, with that, members, we're gonna lay over Senate File 1247 for possible inclusion. Now you may clap. One more. Hold on. Hold on, folks. We have not adjourned yet, so I will adjourn, and you folks can clap even louder after this. We did have a very respectful conversation here regarding wild rice, and I know the subject of religion did come up. I wish there's a committee that talk about that somewhere else. And I'm glad that we come back to the subject of the matter, which is about wild rice. And so let's continue to talk about environment and no disrespect to religion, and also the spiritual belief of our indigenous people, which we should all have the utmost respect for them to share their culture and value with us. And so I'm a person, as your chair here, I'm a person of many beliefs and of no belief. So I'm glad that we uphold this committee with good civility. And so thank you for applaud sometime, but thank you for listening to me and not applauding at times. So when I adjourn, you can applaud one more time as loud as you can. The meeting is adjourned.